We acquire new property to develop, and we get it from many sources. Sometimes we get it from agents, sometimes we get it from people that we've worked with before, as well as we have a management company, so we manage writers and directors. So we have lots of sources that it can come from. Sometimes we'll find ideas, maybe there's a book I like or a play that I want to adapt, and we'll end up hiring a writer that may be one of our management clients or may not be. So it comes from many sources.
Movies can come from any different source, so there's no set way. What books give you is you kind of know the lay of the land of the story, but the most important thing in any movie to me is the idea of the movie.
Finding an idea that will eventually become a hit show is really challenging and tricky, but the ideas can come from anywhere.
We're reading every script that's out there, we're reading magazines, we're reading books, we're going to plays, we're reading plays, we're listening to new songs. Are there lyrics in a song that could make a movie? Poems, I mean, every which way. Old books, go to old bookstores, meeting with people all the time, newspapers, internet, local newspapers, magazines.
If you're a good producer, you have to have a curiosity gene. I probably come up with 20 different ideas every day, and it's like a curse and a blessing. I'll be in the shower driving, I'll hear a song, I'll read something on Reddit, or I'll just go somewhere and I'll go, hey, that could be a TV show. Of course, not everything can be a TV show. Sometimes it's just an idea that should just be a segment, or maybe it should just be an article online. But you never know until you reach out, and then we have to go through the process of figuring out, can this make it to air?
The way we found Pursuit of Happiness, it was aired on 20/20 with Barbara Walters, Chris Gardner's life. And somebody had seen it, and a guy named Mark Clayman, and he brought us the tape, and we watched 20/20. And we went after Chris's rights, and that was on a TV show on a Friday night. So you can find stories in a million different ways. You just have to look.
The main thing I look for when I'm deciding whether or not I want to work on a story and make a film is a picture that I'd like to go see. You know, there are a lot of stories that are available on television for free, right? So I've got to convince people, maybe a couple, to spend $25 on tickets, $5 on gas, maybe $30 on a bit. Suddenly somebody's spending $100 to go hear and watch the story that we're putting together. So the first thing for me is, would I do that? Is it compelling enough for me? And the second thing is, do I think someone else would do it if it's not exactly my kind of story? But I find that I'm a better producer, that we're all better storytellers if it's a story that we ourselves would pay money to go see. So that's really the litmus test. Would I pay for this?
When I'm looking for a story for a movie, a lot of it is an instinctive reaction. I laugh, I cry, I am intrigued, I'm scared. You know, if I'm having those emotional responses to a piece of material, I start to believe that this is something that people can respond to in a similar way. If people say to me, oh, this is hilarious, read this script, and I don't laugh, then it's not something that's, you know, that might be funny, not to me. If it's not funny to me, I'm not gonna make the movie.
I favor the movies that make me emotional, but emotional can make me be emotional about a horror film because it's got something inside it that impassions me. It's got a message about courage. I can get up about an adventure because the characters inside the adventure do things which make me feel special and that this is worth bringing to the screen.
If I am excited when I'm reading the material and I can't read fast enough, I know that I have something. I'm looking for a script that has a beginning, middle, and an end. I'm looking for a script where the central character will possibly go through a change and to win at the end.
Movies are like appetites, and that you're not wanting to eat macaroni and cheese every night or pizza every night or whatever every night. And so you change the flavors. So I've made everything from historical epics to gross out comedies and animation and period pieces in between.
Well, for the first 10 years of this company, we only made horror movies. So we found ourselves really living in that genre, not looking at other things. In the last couple of years, we've really branched out, and now we're more interested in kind of maybe bigger commercial ideas than just a horror movie. But I think at the end of the day, every company has their own identity. I don't think that you can expect to see a lot of dramas or romantic movies coming out of Platinum Dunes. We're eager to make action movies, horror movies, things like that is probably where our brand is, and that's what we're always looking for.
One of the things that works really well for us on television is anything to do with the extreme human condition. Stories about people on the edge, people who are, facing major challenges in their life. And we would program early on in what we call the 3 Ps, anything to do with prisons, prostitutes, or police.
I was told many years ago that we should have specialized. It would be easier for Hollywood to pick us up if we had little handles on us and said as producers, we only do this, this, and this, because then they go, oh yeah, well that's one of those guys kind of thing. And I feel that that's the worst trap to be in for my life. I love cameras, I love making movies, I love the difference. Every time you go out, you spread a different blossom out and see what happens. So I don't have a genre, but I do have a very simple phrase, and that is, I want to make movies, not talkies. And that's because of the visualization. It's exciting for me to see a way of telling a story that's beautiful.
Whether it's a comedy, whether it's a fantasy, whether it's an action movie, if there's an emotional core, it solidifies the audience's reaction. They have an experience. It's like the difference between a great movie and a roller coaster. A roller coaster is super fun. You get off and that's it. You don't have to talk about it. You don't really have to ride it again. If you have a great experience in a movie and you feel emotion, you come out of the movie and you want to talk about it. You want to tell people, wow, I felt really sad, I cried, I this, I that, I laughed really hard, I fell in love. Those things, those emotions create an experience that you want to share with people.
I quote Joseph Campbell, follow your bliss. So it's not about genre, it's about what story grabs me, what character grabs me. And it can come from anywhere. It can come from a short story, it can come from the newspapers, it can come from a book, it can come from out of my own head, my own thinking. And indeed, I've made movies from all those places, beginning from all those places, yeah.
When someone writes a story, they own that intellectual property. Ideas are like property. Right? If you have an idea and you write it down, you own that idea.
To acquire the rights to best-selling books or well-known books, authors are always reluctant to give up those rights unless they know what your plan is for the movie.
So an option is really a payment that you make that gives you the right. Nobody else can buy that book if you have an option on it, but you eventually have to exercise your option. An option is really just an agreement to spend more money later. It's as if I said, let's imagine that you had a hot convertible and I had $50 in my pocket and I said, I know I'm going to have the money to buy that convertible from you. I'll give you $50 now. And we're agreeing here that I'm going to give you $10,000 later. I just hold it for the day. I'll give you $50. And if I go get the money, I'll give you $10,000. So if it was a book, what I might say is, I'll give you $10,000 for 18 months in which you can't sell that book to anyone else. And then by 18 months from now, I have to have given you $200,000 or 1% of the budget so that I can then buy the rights to make your book. So an option is really just an option to purchase. It's preserving the option that you can buy that intellectual property. When I look for writing talent, the main thing that you look for is, has this person written anything really good before? And you have to read it, right? So that's primary. What have they written before? And you try to get a sense, if they're a very experienced writer, of what their batting average is. Because for almost every writer who writes has written 3, 4, 5 things for every one that's gotten made.
If you've done your homework as a producer, and any good producer does his or her homework, you've seen a lot of movies, you've sort of noted in your head, maybe even on a piece of paper in a notebook, who you think is really talented, whose script you like, whose work you like, who's good at funny, who's good at construction. It's by gosh and by golly, except it's unconsciously scientific.
you try to use your best judgment to find the right writer for the right project. You look at what they've done in the past, you talk to them, you get to know them, you see what their sensibilities are, whether they have a keenness for humor, for drama, for romance, and then you try to find the person who you think matches your idea of what the project should be, and hopefully has some type of a track record where you can see what they've done and you can like the projects they've done.
We look for different things with different writers depending on what's being developed, but most important is characters, is character development, that they're really able to differentiate between characters, build in obstacles.
Do they write good characters? Is their dialogue strong? Will they surprise me in their storytelling? Have I read other scripts of theirs that surprises me when I'm turning the page? Did they go left when I thought they were going to go right? I love that. I love a surprise in a writer.
I tend to work with the same writers, and very often our management clients, because I know and trust, that they have the ability. And I think screenwriting is an art form of itself. Somebody can be a great novelist, somebody can be a great journalist, somebody can be a great poet, even a playwright, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a great screenwriter.
Even when you're buying a novel which has a story, which has characters, it's written in a different medium. And the best novels are interior in the characters, and movies can't do that. Movies, the only way you get interior in a character is voiceover, which is not the best cinematic device. So even a book doesn't really guarantee you anything close to that you're making a movie.
Well, it's a little like conducting a symphony in that way. Especially in the making of Smurfs films, we have sort of 3 core sets of writers, and 1 or 2 who come in at the very end for comedy. And they all provide something very different. They provide the beginning structure and storytelling, or they provide the ability to link stories and pull them together tightly and cut the length of the script down and add a little comedy in their shaping. Or they're people who really just come in and they, in a laser way, focus on the drama, the emotion, the strength of a character on the one hand. And then there are others who, again, in a very specific fashion, come in on their own, or what we call at a writer's roundtable, a comedy table, come in and are constantly presenting the ideas of jokes that the director and I will work with our main writers at that point to insert into the screenplay. So we're working to get that script perfect as it possibly can be in that. And then I will take it all the way through the process to where the studio greenlights the movie.
Once I have a script, now I've got the blueprint, right? I've got the blueprint. Now I have to build the house, and I have to get my crew. And I have to get the money to build the house, right? A script is really a blueprint. It's a plan. So on one level, it's a story, obviously. So what I do is, if I have a script, usually I'm looking for a director, right? You can do it in different ways depending on what kind of script you think you have. If I think the script is good enough to attract talent, then I might go straight to directors.
Packaging is when you take a script that's ready to go in your estimation, and you go to an agent or a manager, and you say, I want you to read it for Tom Hanks. Or you go to Tom Hanks directly, or name the name of the actor, name the name of the director, and you put the movie together so that when you walk it into the studio, it's already a go movie in your mind, and you hope that it's a go movie in their mind, because you already have the star or stars, and you have the director. Sometimes you bring it in with the budget already done, and you package it, you put it together so that you're literally handing them a movie that they either say yes or no to.
I'm finding that it's best to attach elements to a project before you go in. I will try to get a director attached. Certainly if the script is not right, I will work with the writer and try to make it better. I will then try to get a director. I will then attempt to attach a star to it, and then I'll bring that package into the studio.
To me, packaging is putting together a number of the elements of the project. The elements can be the financing, an element can be a director, an element can be a cast. When you can put together all three of them, it makes it a lot easier to find someone who's willing to distribute. When scripts come into people with no elements attached, no packages, it makes it a lot easier to cast it aside and put it in a pile that you eventually get to. When it comes in with packaging attached with a cast or a director or financing, I think it puts it in a whole different pile that gets a lot more attention.
Instead of taking a script to the studio and saying, this is the movie we want to make, you come to the studio with a budget and a script and a director and potentially some actors so that they're able to see the whole thing and know exactly what they're paying for.
You know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, studios were much more willing to do the packaging. You know, they wanted the script, they'll develop the script, they'll spend the money, and then they would do it. Today, studios are really looking for producers and directors to kind of do the packaging and bring it to them so they can make a decision. Much easier for a studio to just go, okay, it's this script, it's, you know, this actor, this director, yes or no. Independent movie, absolutely you have to package. If you don't, you'll never get a movie financed.
Film packaging is just essential in terms of getting a movie made. It's really for buyers, distributors, that's the key at the end of the day, is to get your movie distributed. And they want movies that have star cast. So it's absolutely essential. I mean, you can try and make an independent movie with no names and hope that it's gonna catch fire, but that just happens once in a blue moon. But if you suddenly put stars in your movie, everybody's paying attention to it.
You can have the greatest screenplay in the world, and studios and financiers will look at it and go, well, that's nice, who's in it? Or who do you think could be in it?
A great script is everything. On the other hand, to get the money, a great star brings it in. I mean, the money to finance the movie doesn't guarantee box office success, but it surely helps, and studios think so, financiers think so, that's why they finance.
When I'm casting a film, I'm speaking to the casting director and the director every day. Casting on my pictures is a very collaborative process. I'm also talking to the money about the key roles because they're investing and they want to know what they're investing in. So casting is collaborative, and the producer is usually the person who's talking to all the stakeholders. Right? When you're casting a film, the producer's job is to make sure the money's happy, the director's happy, and that you're talking about actors who are going to make the whole enterprise work.
Well, there's two levels of getting a movie made. As a producer, I've got a film I want to do. I'm passionate. I love it. In order to get that movie made in the independent world, I need to find actors that the financiers value, which puts me into this category of names that they've heard of abroad, that have got sufficient horsepower that it's worth putting the budget money up for them to become part of the movie. In the studio system, it's much better because the studio is willing to put money behind stars that have yet to be fully realized. So that in that world, you've got casting where you're looking at who's coming on. Is Chris Hemsworth going to be valuable? And shall we cast him now because in 3 months' time he's coming out in another movie, and then we're going to bet that there's a trail of positives that we can then put our movie into. But what I'm really looking for is who feels magically alive. And I will not work with an actor who I haven't seen read, because I want to be sure that when we put them on the screen, there's this strange specialness about the words feeling real.
I work very closely with the casting directors. You know, we tend to gravitate towards younger actors at the beginning of their career. And so that requires, looking at a lot of auditions and looking specifically for things. But at the end of the day, if the characters in our movies aren't relatable, I don't think they'll do as well at the box office. So we're always striving to find young actors who are representative of what the kids who are going to the movies will see in themselves.
Whether it was something like Titanic that, Leonardo DiCaprio was not a star, barely known at the time, and neither was Kate Winslet, or X-Men, where, we took Hugh Jackman off the stage in Australia to something about Mary. Ben Stiller was not a star, Cameron Diaz was not a star. So, most of my professional career has been making movies and making stars as opposed to not. As an independent producer, the star is much more helpful in terms of finding the money because the investors don't have that same skill set.
We're greedy people in this business. Money is very important to us. And the less money you can spend on movie locations, the more money you can spend on getting your stars or increasing your mix time at the mix or buying a slightly better level of music to go into your film. So when we look at locations, we're looking at two things. What's best for the film, but also are there incentives? Is the government of a state giving you money back, which extends the movie into being a stronger and more spectacular version of what you envision?
When you're making a film, it's really important where you shoot it. And there's an artistic concern, right? Is this a great location? Does it look right? Does it have its own personality for the personalities who are in the film to be informed by, to bump up against? Is it people go to the movies because they want a bigger experience? Is that train station really phenomenal, like Union Station in LA? So there are artistic considerations. Does it look like it? Does it have character? And then there are very practical considerations. You want something somewhere where you can park the trucks, right? And you want something that might be close if you're only going for half a day to one location that's close enough to your other location. A lot of practical. So there's the artistic, the practical, and then there's the financial. Can you afford it? And in the case of a whole movie, is there a tax incentive to shoot there, or is there some kind of incentive? Because a lot of states are giving producers as much as 10 or 20%, even more sometimes, of their budget to shoot in that state because states are interested in having new industries come to their states, and filmmaking is a big industry.
Tax rebates and subsidies are a big part of production today. If I can go to a country or a state where I can get 25 to 35% of the budget for my project, it makes it awfully attractive versus shooting the same project in an area where there is no subsidy or tax refund.
The rebates that states offer are imperative in our filmmaking for the most part. We've shot a number of our films in Austin and Chicago, both of which have, when we were shooting there, had incentives. And we just shot a movie in Atlanta, and the reason we went to Atlanta was there was an incentive there. We shot a movie this summer in New York, there was an incentive there. So we find ourselves going to the states where there is an incentive because you're saving anywhere from 20 to 30%, and that's a substantial savings on a movie. So we're always seeking that out.
So as a producer, location becomes a way of extending your financial or of bringing vision that you couldn't get anywhere else into it. So you go to some spectacular place, you're going to bring some emotional imagery into the film, and it may be worth spending that money. On the other hand, it may be worth these days putting that space in and having your actors work against blue screens. And God knows where locations are in the future. They may be in CGI vaults, and we may all be shooting on sets that are blue or green actually. And we may have actors that we're blowing fans on their faces so they look like they're in these environments. But right now we still go out and shoot in reality most of the time.